And it was released through the Freedom of Information Act, what they were saying to each other, you know, recorded. And the MDs and researchers are saying, well, based on this data, I don't know if I ever want my kid to get shots. And these are the top MDs and researchers saying this to each other.
Right.
But then they manipulated the data to show the vaccines are safe.
Now what about what a lot of parents say, oh, well, they really do help to get rid of the diseases, blah, blah, blah. But then if you look at most schools that get epidemics of measles or mumps, whatever, 85, 90, 95% of the kids are already vaccinated, yet they're still getting the measles and mumps.
Well, there are studies showing measles epidemics in 100% vaccinated populations. Recently here in America there was a mumps epidemic. Almost all the kids who got the mumps were vaccinated. And they don't tell you that getting the mumps shot may suppress the illness, but it leaves them unprotected. If they get these mumps, measles, whatever, when they're older, it's far more dangerous. Far more. So you might be suppressing chickenpox, which was always a harmless. The chance of somebody getting very ill and dying from chickenpox is about the same chance of winning the lottery. 1 in many millions. And usually kids that die, if they have chickenpox, and it's very rare, had other diseases.
Right.
You know, the kids who die of chickenpox are those on cancer chemotherapy, which suppresses their immune system. Or were given steroids and antibiotics, which damage them. If they were just left alone to have the chickenpox, they would have been fine. That's true of many childhood diseases.
So let's get to that next question then. Can vaccines cause cancer?
Well, studies are showing that that's actually true. I even have something here. I don't like to look at my notes too much. But I actually wrote a book on this subject, and it's called Childhood Vaccinations, Questions All Parents Should Ask.
Okay.
And it deals with many of these issues I just discussed. It goes into detail, gives references, the scientific studies, the links on to look for information, and it also comes with an audio CD.
Okay.
So it's about 45, 50 minutes of me explaining some of the basic topics of this subject. It's a very powerful subject.
And people can actually get that by going to your website, and we have that on the bottom of the screen, so they can go there and actually order that.
Absolutely.
And it is a phenomenal book. I have it myself, and it really goes into a lot of what we're covering right now, but it's an incredible resource, and it's kind of laid out as, you know, kind of questions that every parent should know. And what I think is kind of an interesting exercise is to call up a couple pediatricians and go through those questions and ask them some of the questions I'm asking you and hear the answers you get. And it's pretty funny to hear how they backpedal and try and defend their position, because they can't defend it.
Well, I've lectured to MDs, where MDs were in the audience, and they would come up to me and say, where did you get that information? I thought they'd be upset. Well, they were upset, but they weren't upset with me. I'd say, why? I said, see here, it's in the book. You can check it all out. They said, well, we've never heard that before. We were never told this in medical school. I had no idea. Well, some of the people that purchase our materials on vaccinations are medical doctors and pharmacists. And they're leaving the dark side and coming over to the force. And actually, well, they're really getting on a bandwagon. And they're starting to lecture about the dangers of vaccinations. We in our catalog, we have medical professionals who are now making DVDs on this very subject, explaining, and they say, look, this is what's in the government material that the public doesn't see, because most people don't go to medical journals or government studies, but look what they're really saying. And that's the shocker. So about cancer, you asked. I found some really interesting quotes, because years ago, there was very little cancer, and there were very little vaccines. And so you had a whole population that were not vaccinated, and then they started vaccinating. Smallpox was the first one that got popular, So you had two populations, vaccinated and non-vaccinated, and the MDs began to see a difference. And here's one of them. W.B. Clark, MD. Cancer was quote, cancer was practically unknown until smallpox vaccination began. I have never seen a case of cancer in a non-vaccinated person. Here's another medical doctor, a surgeon, Dr. Herbert Snow. I'm convinced that some 80% of cancer deaths are caused by smallpox vaccinations. These are also well known to cause grave and permanent diseases of the heart also. Others, Forbes Laurie, MD, Medical Director of Metropolitan Cancer Hospital, London. I'm convinced that the increase of cancer is due to vaccinations. So then there's many. We have quite a few studies on this. And the question is, why can't we do that study today? Haven't the MDs noticed this? Well, of course not, because almost everyone's vaccinated.
Right.
And cancer has now become, I believe, the #1 killing disease in America, overcoming heart disease as #1. There's more and more cancer, and the MDs can't cure it. Well, maybe they're causing it.
When I was still practicing, Ted, I had a lot of my patients where their kids had leukemia, and I knew several others who had it as well. And when I asked every one of them, was your child vaccinated, every one of them said yes. So I kind of investigated that further, and I never saw a vaccinated child or unvaccinated child who actually had leukemia. It was always in the vaccinated. 100% correlation. You did not see polio, or you didn't see leukemia in an unvaccinated child.
Oh yeah, and that'll be the same with autism and asthma and allergies. In fact, Robert Mendelsohn, the world-famous pediatrician, put it this way. He said, have we traded measles and mumps for leukemia and cancer?
It's incredible.
And he would start, after a while, he said he started his medical career vaccinating kids, and now he's telling his parents, do not vaccinate your children.
And
You'll
it makes
have healthier
perfect
kids.
sense. I mean, especially with leukemia, if you look at it, what is leukemia? It's cancer of the blood. Where do you inject the vaccines?
Into the blood.
I mean, it's just so logical. People just they don't even clue out to that and don't get the correlation with it. It's incredible.
And it makes you wonder why people would ever want to vaccinate their children.
Especially once they see the ingredient, find out the ingredients that you mentioned before, all carcinogens.
Oh yeah. Oh,
how would a sane person
formaldehyde in my child's arm? Of course.
It's crazy.
Mercury, which causes brain damage? Sure.
So here's
that's
cool
why there's so much Alzheimer's today.
Right. Well, here's the next question then. So for parents that learn about this, is there a way for them to legally avoid having their child vaccinated?
Yes, in every state. See, the laws say, and sometimes you see billboards, the law says no shots, no school. Well, that's part A of the law. Part B is if you don't want them, you don't have to have them.
Right.
However, some states are more difficult. States like California and Pennsylvania and Arkansas and others have a philosophical exemption saying, I don't want it, or a religious exemption saying it's not my belief to put this in my child. And it's accepted, and that's all you have to do. I think there's only 2 states in America that give you a hard time, that only permit medical exemptions, and that's West Virginia and Mississippi. All other states have medical, religious, and or philosophical exemptions to vaccines. Canada, it's part of the constitutional law that they have a choice. They can say no. But not everybody is told this.
Right.
Few people know the law. School officials, medical doctors, they don't know the law.
Right.
They're just told no shots, no school, and it's not true. You can avoid vaccination legally. Get your kid through the schools and have no problem.
See, and that's what I feel is almost bordering on the criminal, where a lot of these parents, the only reason they're getting their child vaccinated is because they think they need to get him into school. Not because they think it's going to benefit their health, but they think, oh, I got to get my shots because they have to get them before they get into school.
Well, if only they would give shots when they're 5 and 6 years old, then we'd have a lot healthier kids at least.
Right.
But when you start giving them at birth and at 1 month and 2 months, the damage is far greater. If it was a matter of school, and that's the only argument you'll give them, and they can't do it any other way, say, okay, at least wait until the kid's going to school. Don't give them anything at least until they're 5 years old.
Yeah.
So, you know, but why do I need to give this kid, a newborn, a shot for hepatitis B or HIV if they're not going to school until they're 5 years old or 6 years old?
Right.
It's sad, but
and the parents think, well, you got to show that whole vaccine record before they get them into school.
You don't anyway.
Which is crazy. Well, Ted, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank
I mean,
you.
For people that want more information, on the bottom of the screen throughout this whole show, your contact info is there. And if parents are watching this, if they want more information about the exemptions, they can get that, the resources on your website.
Our book has information on where to go for exemptions, on where to go for all this information I gave. And I advertise it as a book to discuss with yourself, your relatives, your friends, with your doctors, your healthcare providers. You know, put them on the spot. You have to have this. Why?
Well,
and ask them questions.
And I encourage people that are watching this to ask questions, because that's the only way you're going to find out. You know, I appreciate you doing this because you're giving people the other side of the coin. Because right now in our country, we're only getting one side of the coin. That you have to vaccinate, you're an unfit parent if you don't, you can't get them into school unless you do, and your child's basically going to die of all these diseases if they don't get vaccinated. That's really all they're hearing. They're not hearing what you're saying.
It's all fear tactics. It's not based on knowledge and understanding. If the MDs would only give people the truth, and let them make their own decision, we will live in a far healthier and happier world.
Well, Ted, again, I appreciate you coming on. Will you come on again in the future? I know we could talk about this for hours and hours, so I appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing this with people watching.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks.